here in studio with us, Congressman Greg Gianforte. Greg, great to see you as always.
Aaron, good to see you.
I'm trying to think, where do we even start? Because there are so many big topics to cover, but trade is another big discussion in the national news today. President Trump just scored another major victory with Japan.
Yeah, getting the tariffs removed on American beef going to Japan. This opens up a new market for our ranchers here in the state. A couple other big things happened last week on trade. We do 6 times more trade with Canada than we do with China. We had a town hall, Aaron, a couple weeks ago. We asked Montanans, thousands of Montanans, which is more important, lifting tariffs on China or getting the deal done with Canada? 10-1, people said Canada. And last week, the last 3 obstacles to getting the USMCA approved were removed. President Trump lifted aluminum and steel tariffs on Canada and Mexico. He also said no tariffs on automobiles from Mexico and Canada. Those were the last objections. There were some changes the Mexican government had to make. I sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi last week saying, Madam Speaker, the 3 objections you had, they're gone. We need to pass the USMCA to make sure our Montana ag producers have access to these markets.
And it looked like initially last week after you sent that letter, some of the reports I was reading, I think in Politico or elsewhere, made it look like Nancy Pelosi was ready to start moving forward with the USMCA. But then the big news yesterday is, nope, Nancy Pelosi and congressional Democrats want to slow walk the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. I mean, the congressional Democrats have been lecturing us all about Trump and trade, and here they are blocking one of Trump's major accomplishments on trade.
It's being served up on a silver platter. All we need to do is vote. If they want to vote against it, go ahead. We should at least have a vote for it. We've had this problem with the leadership getting reasonable bills to the floor. Of course, the majority controls what comes to the floor in the House, but we've had their progressive leftist agenda coming forward, whether it's taxpayer-funded elections, gun control, putting men on women's sports teams. These are their top priorities, and yet we have a deal that would create trade with Canada and Mexico, a renegotiated NAFTA that's better for the U.S. We should sign that deal.
I got to get your reaction. I saw Tom Ludy had a big write-up in the Lee newspapers today. Here's my deal. We had special counsel Robert Mueller make his announcement 2 days ago. We played it live on these very radio stations. They spent almost $25 to $40 million. They couldn't find collusion. It's done. It's over. Let's move forward as a country and start debating the real issues. I mean, what else is there to say at this point?
It's over. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats need to move on. This was a cow they had hoped to milk all the way through the election. Turns out it's a steer. There's nothing there. There's nothing to get. We need to move on. Yeah. And, there's things we need to work on. We need to be working to get prescription drug prices down. We need to continue to enhance our economy. We need to secure the border, and we need to fix immigration. Let's go work on things that the American people care about, not your political intrigue, political theater stuff in your attempt to try and win an election.
Well, and one of the things I thought was most interesting was, so yesterday the big story was about how Nancy Pelosi was slow walking the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Well, now congressional Democrats are all outraged because Donald Trump is basically trying to strong-arm Mexico to stop the illegal immigrants from flowing through and basically threatening tariffs on Mexico for that. All of a sudden, Mexico trade matters to congressional Democrats who've been slow-walking the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement.
In April, Aaron, we arrested 100,000 people at the southern border illegally crossing. That's like arresting every single person in Billings, Montana in 1 month for doing something illegal. We have a crisis situation. I'm pleased to tell you we've gotten the president some money. We're building the wall. But we also need to reform our immigration system because we're pulling nuclear families apart with our chain migration. We're giving out visas like lottery tickets instead of encouraging people with skills that can come here and help make America stronger.
Speaking of borders, we talked about our southern border. Our northern border, you did have some victories here with more hopefully to come too, but you had some victories. You got Customs and Border Protection to pull back. They were really trying to severely curtail operations at our northern ports of entry in northeastern Montana. You got them to pull back and extend some of those hours.
Yeah, those ports are critically important for ag. The largest John Deere parts dealership in North America is up in Regina. Your combine breaks during harvest time. You need the part. Doesn't matter if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's sort of like 911, that 24-hour port at Raymond. You're not going to use it every morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, but when you need to make that call, you need that port to be open. So we took the case of the High Line to Customs and Border Patrol, made the appeal, and I was thrilled just late last week, they reversed their decision and committed to keep Port of Raymond open 24 hours a day.
All right. And then we've only got a few more minutes left here because I know you're going to be cruising around with FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr. On that front, you're going to be talking a lot about agriculture and high tech. Of course, people know you're the high tech guy for Montana, founder of Right Now Technologies. This push for 5G, I did joke with the commissioner. I said, I remember talking with Greg Gianforte, and he said, I'd just be happy with just give me a G in some of these places, let alone 5G. But nonetheless, talk about the trip across the state with Commissioner Carr.
Yeah, so we're a number of things. I mean, we have to close the digital divide. Rural broadband is so critically important for healthcare, through telemedicine, for education, and to bring jobs to our community so we can bring vibrancy back to complement our agricultural base. I'll also be speaking with him about robocalls. Boy, we hate those things. 26 billion last year in the United States alone. And that's why I introduced the Stop Robocalls Act, which is a congressional piece of legislation that would allow telecommunications companies to block these calls that are just scamming people for the personal information and trying to steal their retirements.
Yeah, when I spoke with him earlier this morning, we'll share it in the 9 o'clock hour, but he did say that, in fact, next week they're planning on implementing some measures at the FCC regarding robocalls, and thanks in large part to your efforts to lead that push, because, I don't even answer most of these calls. If I don't know who it's coming from, I don't answer it because it's most likely a robocall.
Well, we've had instances. We had testimony in front of our committee where calls would be masquerading as the local hospital. And they'd call up and say, Aaron, I'm here with Billings Clinic. Looking at your record, just want to confirm your credit card we have on file here. Could you just give me that number back one more time?
Because they can make it look like it is calling from that hospital. They can make it look like it's calling from somebody on your friends list.
Yeah, I had a gal in Bozeman tell me she got a call, and the number was from her little brother. Problem was, her little brother had passed away 2 months earlier from a drug overdose. Nobody should have to go through that.
Yeah,
it was malicious. These people masquerade. The telcos know what these calls are. We need to change the law so they can just block them at the source.
The final 30 seconds to go, because I know you got to run, Greg, or we'd keep you around for a little bit longer. But this continued strength of the American economy. I mean, that's the big story.
It keeps rolling. Here. It's booming. It wasn't a complicated strategy. Let people keep the fruits of their labor by lowering taxes, and let's peel regulations back. America's strong and stronger because of this president and the work we're doing in Congress.
Yeah, they said, what's he going to do, wave that magic wand? Well, apparently he did. Apparently the Republicans in Congress did, because we're seeing it economically. Congressman Gianforte, always a pleasure. Safe travels with the commissioner today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Aaron.